Welcome back to Brainwaves, or welcome if this is your first time here. In today's episode, I want to talk about something that I think many people can relate to. And it can be very frustrating because it's something that can show up even when you're trying your best. And that is self-doubt. This is something that has been a constant for me personally for a very long time. That feeling when you make a decision and then almost immediately start questioning it, even when there's no clear reason to. Where you hesitate before making a decision, or you second guess things after they've happened, or feel unsure about things you probably do know how to do. And sometimes it goes even deeper than that. It can turn into a feeling of, I don't really belong here. I'm not as capable as people think I am. At some point, people are going to realise that I don't know what I'm doing. Like you're not as confident in yourself as you should be. Even when you've worked hard. Even when you've done things well before. And that's why it's so confusing, because logically you might think you're capable, but emotionally it doesn't feel that way. And that gap between what you know and what you feel, that's where self-doubt grows. And it can present itself in small ways, where you think, was that the right thing to say? Should I have done that differently? Am I actually capable of this? It's not always clear and noticeable. Sometimes it's just a small moment of hesitation, a moment where you hold back, a feeling of not quite trusting yourself, or constantly needing reassurance. Eventually, doubting yourself can affect how you move through things. You might take longer to make decisions, you might avoid certain opportunities, or wait until you feel more ready. But that feeling of being ready doesn't always come. And that is where self-doubt can keep you stuck. Because it doesn't always tell you to stop. It just makes you unsure. And that uncertainty builds. So where does it come from? I think most of the time it's not just one thing. It's a mix of experiences, habits, and patterns. If you've ever felt judged or worried about how you come across, that can make you cautious. You start thinking more about how your actions might be perceived. It can stimulate that fear of being judged. And that can lead to holding back or trying to get everything perfect. And if your inner voice is quite critical, like mine is, that just adds another layer. Because instead of supporting your own decisions, it questions them. It points out what could go wrong or what you didn't do perfectly. So you end up caught between wanting to move forward and not fully trusting yourself to do it. Something worth noticing is the difference between the two kinds of pauses. In some of my earlier episodes, I spoke about pausing to recognise what is going on in your mind. And that kind of pause usually feels calm. It creates space. It gives you a moment to step back, to observe, to understand what's happening without reacting straight away. But the pause that comes from self-doubt feels very different. It feels tense and heavy. It's hesitation. Not a pause that gives you clarity. It's a pause that keeps you in the question. You're not stepping back from the thought, you're sitting inside of it. And recognising that difference can really help. Because one kind of pause moves you forward and the other keeps you in place. And something else that can contribute to this is the idea that you should feel confident before you act, that you should feel ready or certain or sure of yourself. But in reality, a lot of the time, you don't. Especially when something really matters to you, or when you're doing something new. So instead of seeing that uncertainty as normal, it can feel like a sign that you shouldn't do it, like it means you're not capable. When actually it just means you're stepping outside of what's familiar. And something that's really important to understand is that self-doubt doesn't always mean you're not able. It often means you're paying attention, you care about the outcome, and you want to get things right. But when that turns into hesitation, it stops you from moving forward at all. So how do you start to shift this? Not by forcing yourself to feel confident, but by slowly building trust in yourself. The first thing is recognising when you're second guessing, noticing those moments of hesitation, where you've made a decision but you're second guessing it anyway. Because most of the time, that doubt comes in after the fact. And it doesn't always need to be followed. The second thing is allowing your first decision to stand. Not every time, but more often than you currently do. Let yourself think, I've made this choice, I'm going to stick with it. Even if there is a bit of uncertainty there, because that is completely normal. But constantly going back and rethinking everything feeds that doubt. Another thing I think can help is reducing the pressure to get things exactly right. Because when everything feels like it has to be perfect, every decision feels so much heavier. And that makes it harder to trust yourself. So instead of thinking, I need to get this right, try instead, I will handle whatever comes from this. Because that builds confidence in a different way. Not in the decision itself, but in your ability to deal with the outcome. Another thing that I think is important is taking action before you feel fully ready. Because waiting for certainty often just leads to more waiting. And the more you act despite the self-doubt, the more evidence you build that you can trust yourself. And eventually that starts to feel more natural. And if you're someone who tends to second guess yourself, take a moment to recognise it. Because once you're aware of it, you can start to change how you respond to it. Not all at once, but gradually. Let yourself move forward a bit more freely. Let decisions feel a bit lighter. And slowly, that trust in yourself will start to build. This podcast is a space where I want you to be able to talk about these things honestly. So if this is something you can relate to, or if you've experienced it in your own way, please feel free to message me on Instagram if it's something that you wish to talk about. I genuinely love to hear from you, and it might help someone else feel a bit less alone too. Because a lot of the time we think we're the only ones feeling like this, but we're not. If anything in this episode has resonated with you, I'm really glad you're here, and I hope you'll be here for the next one.